extra layer I wanted to put on that is taboo, but the use of pornography now in, modern society, where is that relationship, technological relationship to pornography going for folks and primarily Gen Z?
Now, this might be shocking, but this is something that liberal and conservative thinkers actually agree on.
Hmm.
This is something they agree on. So you can have somebody like Jordan Peterson
Mhm.
and Liz Plank. Liz Plank wrote For the Love of Men. So she's a feminist thinker, has done a lot of work on problems with patriarchal societies. And then you've got Jordan Peterson, who loves patriarchal societies and sees nothing wrong with it.
Mhm.
Two people who could not be more opposed agree on the problems with pornography.
Mhm.
Everyone is in agreement that it is a problem. Now, this might also sound taboo. I'm a little bit nervous about how this will sound. Pornography in and of
Mhm.
itself isn't a problem.
Right.
It's always been there. It was sometimes used as an aid for marriages that had kind of lost their pizzazz, and this was just supposed to spice things up. There's actually such a thing as feminist porn, like it exists. However, what has happened is that because it obviously makes a lot of money, it is, and everybody's got the internet now on their phone, the temptation to look at it constantly and often, and the amount of money that it makes, because it's international, right? Like that's how, even if your own country has laws about what can and cannot be had, I mean, you can still have access to it because of the internet from international pornography. So the prevalence of it that everybody's agreeing on, the more one is watching it, and men tend to watch it more than women, although women do watch it, but men tend to watch it more. The problem is the more you are watching it, and then the more one becomes aroused by those images, the less likely they're going to be able to experience arousal in front of an actual person.
Mhm.
So that is becomes an addictive thing because you're just in this constant pleasure seeking state, and the only thing that will do it for you is more of this pornography. Now, one of the issues is that pornography, and this is very disturbing, but it's becoming more and more violent, particularly towards women, and that's actually the more popular stuff that's out there. So what is happening is that people who are very young, so now we're talking about like probably in Gen Alpha, people who are very young, who maybe in the United States, we don't have very good sex education. We just don't. People just don't want to talk about it. And if you don't talk about it with your kids, the internet will get to them first. And so there's a lot of debates right now in the United States about, oh, it's too young to be doing sex ed to kids who are this young. But listen, they have access to phones. And if your child doesn't have access to a phone, they are going to find a kid in the neighborhood or another friend who is going to tell them or show them stuff on the phone. That's chances are pornography is going to be the first um, sex ed lesson. And because it is so unrealistic and it can be violent towards women, even young girls are thinking this is what it's supposed to be. And then what happens is that when there is an actual interaction, maybe when they're older, it's so unsatisfying for both parties. It's so unsatisfying that people are not investing in having sexual relationships. There's actually a sex recession going on now. People are
Mhm.
having less sex now than they were 30, 40, 50 years ago. That is so strange to me to think that my mom's generation was having more sex than the current generation.
Mhm.
So, and the reason is because they're addicted to their phone. First of all, they're too busy. They're addicted to their phone. They're addicted to pornography. They don't have time for relationships. The sex is bad because everybody's trying to mimic what they maybe saw in porn, and it's so unsatisfying, or they're not taking the time to get to know each other. So the sex recession that we're having is really not just about sex. It makes us rethink, well, wait a minute, what is it? And sex is actually the expression of the things we talked about: vulnerability, communication, love, fun, And maybe some embarrassment here and there, like parts jiggle. There's stuff like that that's going on. Sex is the expression of all of those things. Sometimes just a couple parts, maybe all of those parts coming together. Nurture, care, love, communication, vulnerability. So if sex is not there, we're having a recession of it. That means those other things are missing,
Mhm.
because that's what it takes for them to be. So that's why it's so serious. But the pornography is actually scary because people are going to injure themselves. We have to remember there are actors who are playing this role. They have
Mhm.
gotten, if it's okay for me to say, they've got a lot of lube, and then they're just trained for the camera to just be able to just go for it. But women's bodies in particular don't work that way. There is an emotional aspect, there's a warm-up aspect, there's lots of parts involved in order for the woman to be aroused. That takes time. Pornography doesn't show that. So what's happening is that young people are trying to jump into things, and it's not pleasurable. It can even be painful.
Mhm.
And one of the one there was a study that came out. Peggy Orenstein, she talks a lot about this. She's a journalist who talks a lot about sex ed. And she said what's happening is that if you ask young men and young women, and we're talking like 17, maybe 17 to 23 years old, if they found sex satisfying, and they might both respond yes. The problem is that what constitutes a satisfying sexual experience for a woman, or for a young woman, or for a young man, are two totally different things. So a young woman will say satisfied if the following conditions are met: it didn't hurt, and he climaxed. That's all. And I compare that to a meal. Like, would you ever go out to a restaurant, like on a date, and say, "Hey, did you like your meal?" And if the young woman said, "Well, I didn't get food poisoning and he liked his dish,
Mhm.
so it was great." That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So pornography is now the first bit of sex ed that a lot of people are getting, and it is not going over well.